They sit on the rocky dunes of a pebble beach. Beyond the sound of their tears are the waves of the river sea, crashing softly against stone. Whenever the waves recede, lips pulling away from seaweed gums, the water washes through maraca-shaped pebbles. Each one clacks softly against its neighbor. The soft whoosh of the water is a balm against their sorrow. They hold hands. They cannot see each other. Their eyes are blinded by viscous tears, but their fingertips can dance together, and for the rest they have their memories. Memories of young faces blanched by fear, of young conscripts standing to attention in newly pressed uniforms, of sweaty palms clutching at issued las guns, of eyes burning with both terror and pride, of a time before the weeping, when the galaxy still made sense. They do not speak. Their tears collect in their throats, thick and stinking. Their eyes are raw. The foulness has streamed in scratching floods. Their throats are rasped coarse by days of sleepless sobbing. But they hold hands, and there is nothing they need to say. Their names are Patroclus and Cassandra, but everyone knows them by Patrick and Cass, private second class of the Ultramar Defense Auxilia stationed upon Parmenio. Just two conscripts in a hastily mustered army of millions. Defenders of humanity against warp-spawned hell. Victims of the sorrow, broken and without hope. Two children, barely past their 15th birthdays. They had met on the day they were conscripted. The work bells had rung across the orbital helium mines of Circe, resounding strangely in the shimmer of colorless smoke. They had worked opposite shifts. Patrick had been walking home, Cass had been walking to work. Both had been tired. Both had heard the clarion call, and in that moment, chosen a different life. They had first seen each other while waiting in the hangar bays of Export Bay 74. Chance, or fate, had slipped them next in line. The queue had seemed endless, snaking up and down the length of the hangar.
"You were so awkward,"
Cass would later tease Patrick.
"A gangly Void Clan boy in a hand-me-down coat."
"You were beautiful," Patrick would reply, and his guileless innocence would make Cass fall in love with him all over again. They had been nervous of reaching the end of the line and being turned away, nervous of being sent back to a life of helium mining on the orbital platforms above Circe, of never feeling the solidity of natural earth beneath their feet. But by the time they had finally reached the conscription desk, they had almost forgotten why they were there. They needn't have worried. No volunteers were turned away. Cass squeezes Patrick's hand. He is sobbing. She is sobbing too. It is an ugly, racking, choking sound. It is the worst thing she has ever heard, even worse than the screech of metal expanding and constricting under a failing grav generator. It is the sound of hell, and so she focuses on the clacking of the pebbles along the beach. The waves brush along each stone in a gentle whisper. The Sisters Hospitaller have explained that the sorrow is spread through mites. Containment is all but impossible. One of the first casualties of war is hygiene. The mites are in the rations, in the uniforms, in the ammunition packs, even between the pages of their primers. The mites multiply and they get everywhere. And when they bite you, you'll never know joy again. That is what the sisters have told them, but Patrick isn't convinced. He understands that his tear ducts are infected. He understands that there is a sickness running through his blood, and he can just about believe that he's been poisoned by a mite barely bigger than a needle prick. But that doesn't explain why he feels so sad. Patrick squeezes Cass's hand. She is sobbing. He is sobbing too. He tries to focus on the clacking of the pebbles along the beach, but his thoughts drift to despair. He remembers his friends blown apart by errant bolt rounds, their innards turning inside out and black. He remembers the horizons of gibbering, rotting dead, shambling closer and closer. The scream of alarms as the air fills green and grey, the hot wetness of his breath against his gas mask. His older sister breathing shallower and shallower, half crushed by a helium pump on the orbital docks of Circe. Patrick screaming, just 6 years old. How could a mite make him think about that? Patrick makes the mistake of wiping his eyes. He feels the stinking sludge of his tears prickle along his skin. A new putrescence spills from his ducts and clogs his sight thicker. He feels the itch of his eyeballs in their sockets. Infection rawness erodes away nerve fibers and soft jelly, the screaming agony of eyes that he cannot physically close. In a few days, the damage will be absolute. He will be blind. Forever. He will be lucky to keep his eyes at all. Cass feels Patrick rubbing at his eyes. As she weeps, she bumps him with her shoulder. It is meant as both comfort and a gentle rebuke. Cass tries not to think about the itch pain in her own eyes. If she doesn't focus on something else, she'll make the same mistake as Patrick. Somehow, the pain will get worse. Instead, she tries to remember the sight of the River Sea from the banks of Edemos. She imagines the rising glory of Hecaton, the mind-boggling breadth of the domed administratum headquarters, nearly 3,000 meters across. She remembers her awe when their shuttle first broke the clouds above the capital. That emotion that wriggled through her stomach and altogether felt like fear. Those sights exist only in memory now. Cass would not want to see what Hecaton has become. She would not want to see the corruption that has infested its walls and transformed buildings to swelling pustules of diseased flesh. She would not want to see the yellow-black clouds above the administratum dome, that at first glance is diseased smoke, but in truth is a swarm of flies, so thick and expansive that it stretches across an entire city. She would not want to see any of it, and she is glad not to hear it either, even if the buzzing is not just drowned out by the clacking pebbles, but also by the rasping scratch of Patrick's sobs. Cass shuffles closer to Patrick. She plants the soles of her army boots against the ground. She feels the bumpy solidity of pebbles beneath her feet. "There they are," a woman says. Patrick and Cass angle their heads, trying to pass the voice from among the sisters Hospitaler. They blindly frown at the nervousness in the sister's voice, the febrile energy of her hurried words. "I apologize, Lord." "There is no need to apologize," comes the reply. The voice is like nothing Patrick or Cass has ever heard. It reverberates deep and calm. To Cass, it is resonant with an impossible wearied sadness. To Patrick, it is graced by paternal love. "I see that they are young." The teenagers stumble to their feet. They cannot see the newcomers, but something in them knows that it is important to face them. They squeeze each other's hand. They weep, but there is a tightness in their chest that feels different. It compresses so tight that it almost feels as though their hearts might burst. They hear heavy footfalls on the approach, the crunch of stones beneath whirring armored boots. Each feels a huge hand on their shoulder. Each is so heavy and strong that the merest pinch would shatter bone. "Do not weep," the newcomer says. "There is yet hope." And with his words they begin to see. It starts with the tightness in their chests. It is a bubbling pressure against a struggling dam, and when it finally breaks, the tightness releases in a cathartic flood. They are still weeping, but now their tears are as spring rain, washing away the filth and putridity of infected sobs. The scratch-itch pain in their throat retreats, millimeter by millimeter, and disappears entirely. The dried pus clogging their eyes falls away in a dissipating torrent, and their eyelids instinctively close, soothing the agony of eyeballs seared to the precipice of rot. The horror and the misery spill from their souls, washing into the water that massages clacking pebbles along the beach. Patrick and Cass open their eyes. They see an angel. They cannot help but recognize him. They have seen his face 1,000 times before on statuary and portraiture. The face is not obviously handsome, but it is far from ugly. It is broad with strong features, cropped with a neat fringe of blonde hair and a robust patrician's nose, and it radiates such fatherly calm that the two teenagers can't help but feel like toddlers when he looks upon them. Rebute Gilliman smiles. It is a genuine smile, but there is a seriousness in his eyes, a weariness that he cannot quite mask. "Soldiers, what are your names?"
I'm Cass. Cassandra. This is Patroclus, my lord."
The Primarch nods. "I am Rebute Gilliman." He is still smiling. "How old are you both?" Patrick finds his voice.
15, lord."
15. Gilliman replies sadly. He lifts his hands from their shoulders. So young. The Primarch stares across the river sea towards corrupted Hecaton. Something in his eyes warns Patrick and Cass not to follow his gaze. The profound exhaustion of a god being that has lived too long and seen too much. Not that they want to look away from him. Their eyes are fixed on the resplendence of his armor, the shimmering, majestic power of his sword, sheathed in a scabbard of such beauty that the teenagers are almost brought to tears once more. "My lord," says an attendant, and only then do Patrick and Cass realize that the Primarch is followed by half a dozen Astartes, Palatine Esmeralda in tow. Gilliman nods. "I know." He hides a sigh behind another smile. "Private Cassandra, Private Patroclus, duty calls." He turns away from Hecaton and the River Sea. "Thank you, both, for everything you have done to defend humanity. Courage and honor."
Courage and honor, my lord,"
Cass finishes. Rebute Gilliman leaves, followed by his honor guard. Palatine Esmeralda glares at the two teenagers, mouthing something about them returning to the field hospital, and then hastens after the Primarch. They disappear over the rocky dune and out of sight, leaving the two teenagers alone.
"Cass?"
Patrick offers.
"Did you, Yes,"
Cass says.
"I saw them too. I think that actually happened."
Patrick laughs. It is infectious with joy. It is the best thing that Cass has ever heard. They turn to face each other. Their young faces are gaunt and aged by war. They have been hollowed out by sleepless nights, rationed diets, and sudden terror. Their purified tears have washed streaks down their cheeks, cleaning away dirt and the accumulated grime of haggard months. Cass reaches up to Patrick's face. She hesitates to touch him, loath to obscure his face even a little behind her hand.
"There you are."
Patrick smiles. He gently places his palm against Cass's cheek. "Still beautiful." They rest their foreheads together and stare into each other's eyes.
Thank you for listening to this video from the Archive Tower. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe to the channel.